Thank you so much for joining in the session. My name is Hlengiwe Mfeka, your presenter today. Right, and we are now going to look at today's agenda, which are the things that we're going to cover in this short 1 hour. We're going to cover the C Delta registration process. It's very important because this session is about the C Delta program, and we will do that integrating, and then we will move on to look at what are the benefits of integrating learner-centered approach when you are designing lessons or when you are designing a learning program. We will also look at some of the common concerns with regards to learner-centered approach, and we will dive into alternative methods that one could consider when designing learner-centered curriculum. And finally, we will take you through the process or perhaps not the process, but where we will take you through a model that you can use when designing your own learner-centered program or lesson plan. Right, so we will now move on to the C Delta registration. But before I begin, I just want to find out from you if we do have participants, or if we do have participants who are joining the session for the first time and they don't know about the program, so that I am clear what to cover in this briefing about C Delta, because it's something that we had already covered in our previous sessions. But in a case where there are new people, we really want to take you through the orientation or the introduction of the C Delta program. In fact, we covered this in our very first session in May. Right. I'm going to go straight to the introduction. I'm going to really be on a rush on this one, okay? So what is this C Delta program? So C Delta program, C Delta is the acronym standing for Commonwealth Digital Education Leadership Training in Action, which is a Commonwealth of Learning project in collaboration with SchoolNet South Africa. And the goal for this program is to promote digital education leaders in the Commonwealth in the Commonwealth nations. Right, so it's not only to promote the digital education leaders, but also it is about promoting it's about promoting leaders in the field of digital education. So as you are here, we are looking forward that you you become a digital education leader, not only becoming a digital education leader, but also producing other leaders who are like yourself, right? So that is a C Delta program in a nutshell, right? So I'm now going to go straight to the certification. So the program has 7 modules. That is the course of this program. It has 7 modules. These 7 modules are both for educators as well as for the students. The students, they take from module 1 to module 3, and for the educators from module 1 to module 7. And with educators, once you have completed all the 7 modules, you go through the post-test. So there is a pre-test as well as a post-test. Before you begin to take the course modules, you need to first take the pre-test, as as a diagnosis of where your digital learning gaps are, so that you are able to map your you are able to map your studying of the course, right? In completion, you will receive a whopping 35 CPTD points. So what you do, you share your your pre and post test with us, SchoolNet, and we send you your SACE and your certificate. In addition to the SACE and your certificate, you also receive the C Delta International Recognized Certificate. So those are some of the benefits. You may also but at this stage, that's not possible because the program is ending at the end of this month. Yeah, we won't be having any master training sessions, but at times you find that the following year, the program opens and we're looking for trainers. So there are possibilities of you being invited in that master training. So there are plenty of opportunities, you know, by joining in the program. Right, this is what I have already covered on how do you take part. I want to cover this part as the last component of this briefing, which is the registration. So your very first steps after this session, we really want you to do this, even if you know you're not intending to train other teachers or whatsoever, but we do request you to register in the C Delta platform. There are so many benefits of registering in the platform. You get to collaborate with other educators around the world. So you create networks globally within the platform. You also have access to the learning materials, and it's not only the materials, but also there are like a vast of resources that you could use in your in your role. I'm not sure what your role is, but in different roles as educators, right? So you need to plug into this URL, which is the C Delta URL. My colleague Zodumo is going to paste it in our chat box so that you can easily access it. Alternatively, you can simply take a screenshot of this slide so that you will be able to copy it. But the best one is that you get it from the chat box because you know that you have typed, the spelling and everything is correct. It's https cdelta.call.org. That is the address. Now, I'm going to point out a few things which are important here, or which you need to take note of when you are doing your registration. Obviously, it's the normal. That's your first name, your last name, the email address, the password. Now, when you are by the email address, you need to use your active email address, right? And then the password. The password is not the password for your email address, is the password that you're gonna create, which you would use to log in the system. Now, with the password there, you need to follow. You need to follow the password creation in the platform. Number one, the platform is case sensitive, so when you are creating your password, note which characters are capital letters, which ones are not capital letters, and so forth. Now, the rule is that there is a capital letter, there is a small letter, there is a symbol, and there is a number. To make an example, my name is Hlengiwe, so I can create a password which is called a capital letter H for my first name, Hlengiwe. The rest is small letters at 2021. At is a symbol, 2021, it's a it's numeric characters. And then you will need to confirm your password. What is also important here is that when you are joining the course, you don't join as an individual. You join as part of the organization, and you don't look for your school. You may not find your school, but you look for SchoolNet South Africa. So you need to scroll down and find SchoolNet South Africa. That is very important because when you register under SchoolNet South Africa, we are able to assist you with your technical challenges. We are also able to track, the back end, like to track whether you have successfully registered, whether you have completed the pre-test. But if you have not registered under SchoolNet South Africa, it is a challenge because we are unable to assist you. Also, you don't count as someone who is, because SchoolNet South Africa is an accredited provider of this program in South Africa. Right, and then the rest is, it's simple and straightforward. In terms of the user tab, you select, you can select a teacher or a practitioner. I'm assuming that we don't have students here, but in case we have students, you would need to select a student one, because with the student, the dashboard or your your dashboard is different from that of an educator in terms of the number of modules which are displayed in your dashboard. Right. I'm now going to exit from this. Perhaps you also want to take a screenshot of this video registration guide, where in a video format, we are taking you through the process of registration. Should you miss it, or there are elements that you can't follow, you are able to watch the video again. Right, so it looks like that. That is teacher dashboard. Right, so from here, after this session, we would like you to register, and then you complete the pre-test, go through the modules and at the end, you complete the post-test. Now, with the post-test, you don't necessarily need to complete after like completing all the 7 modules. Like when you take the pre-test, we assume that others, they already have, some kind of knowledge on different topics or different subjects which are covered. So it means you don't necessarily need to study that. Therefore, you would only study what you want to study, and then you can attempt a post-test at any stage, right? The last bullet, I have already explained about it. Right, so that's that about the C Delta program and the registration. So today's topic is extracted from one of the modules. You would see that when you look at all these 7 modules, they are interrelated. You may find that the topic on learner-centered approaches is covered in module 4. You may also note that it's also covered in module 7. Right, so there is that connection within the modules. Right. Now I'm going to exit this presentation and move on to today's presentation, which is creating learner-centered learning, creating learner-centered lesson designs. Okay, so let's get kicking on today's business. Now, I would like us to take a moment to step back from our own roles as instructional designers, as educators, as coaches, whatever your role is as an attendee today. I want you to take on a role of a learner. How do you learn best? What learning activities are the most motivational to you as an individual? How do you interact with other learners? And the last one is, what do you struggle with when learning new information or even mastering a new skill? What challenges do you do you come across, or what are the obstacles? Perhaps in the interest of time, let's respond to all the questions all at once, right?
Yes, good afternoon. It's Samsung.
Thank you,
As,
Susan.
yes, as a learner, I learn a lot by listening. I'm a kind of a person who learns by listening, and when as a lesson goes on, I want to understand the lesson there. I don't rely on self-studying after a lesson, but then as much as I do to remind myself on a learning experience.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, what learning activities most motivate me? Also, it's whereby I'm afforded a chance to participate on a lesson by through discussion and group discussion. Now, on the question that says how do you interact with other learners? So I'm a kind of a person who likes, after learning, and then we discuss with other fellow learners, because I like to explain also. I learn by explaining concepts or ideas or whatever that has been taught. So I feel that I have learned if I am able to explain whatever that I learned through group discussion. On the question that says, what do you struggle with when learning new information or mastering? I usually encounter problems if I can't relate what I learned into reality.
Hmm.
So I want a realistic uh, something or explanation so that I can feature what I'm learning into real life.
Good day, everyone. Um, so I'm a visual learner. I enjoy learning by seeing what it is that I'm being taught. And say, for example, I love literature. So if you're going to explain a certain poem for me, I'd like to see some of the elements that are in the poem that I can easily relate with. Don't just tell me what the poem is about. We go through it. I want to see exactly. If you're going to tell me about a voucher, some of us, we don't really know what vouchers are, so I'd like to see that voucher. Also, I want to experience it. As a literature student, I would like to experience acting out in a play so that I can understand how the character at that moment felt. And how does that help me interact with other learners? Group work comes into play. We come together, we collaborate our ideas about how to present a certain character or a certain scene in a play, and we bring that to life. So as a visual learner who might see that from other learners, I get to play and not just be a textbook audience, but I become the stage audience as well. Difficulties that I might experience.
Hmm.
Um, Firstly, if I am just told what the character does, how the character acts, it's hard for me to really come to grips with exactly the character and how I can put the character into my own reality if I'm not told exactly how the character acts, you know. So it's all about feeling and seeing more than just listening and understanding from that perspective alone. So yeah, thank you.
Hmm. Wow, interesting. I like how our speakers, are using examples to answer these questions. Thank you so much. Right, so we're now going to quickly move to our chat and check from there. So Tumo, can you take us through that?
Okay, viewer says, I learn through discussions and debates. Activities, I like research question. They make me curious. Another one from Kosinati. As a learner, I learn through deliberations and activities that enhance understanding of the content taught.
Can you please repeat that one?
As a learner, I learn through deliberations and activities that enhance understanding of the content taught.
Is that all?
Yes, that's all.
Wow, thank you so much. Really amazing. I was trying to consolidate the different responses from our lovely speakers. So he mentioned that he learned best by doing, whilst Tamsanga mentioned that by listening. Quite interesting, isn't it interesting? Naba prefers, actively involved by doing things, whilst Tamsanga is listening. Nomatemba, I like how she how she put it, where she says, I want to see. She is a visual learner. And we have Viwe who want to engage in oral discussion, and also same as Unkosenati, who also want to engage in such oral discussion through deliberations or through activities where he is an active participant. That's really amazing. Now, the purpose of asking these questions is that, understanding your own learning preferences is a best place to start when considering the benefits of creating learner-centered programs, or creating a learner-centered design. Right, so let's move forward. Before we then get to the core of the business, let's first look. I really like this description. Description about learner-centered education, and I highlighted some of the three things which are included here. It says it's from reimagining education. So it says learner-centered education is about an entirely new way of seeing, number one, of thinking about, as well as acting on education. And I'm really excited that in our audience we have a diverse group of teachers. We have we have people who are also who are specialists, education specialists, who are curriculum designers. Now, when you think of the learner-centered education, it's about, a new shift, of doing things, and it focuses on these three aspects. Obviously, this is all about a learner. My apologies about the dogs from the neighbors. They're not from the house. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Right, so it focuses on three aspects, and all these three aspects speak to a learner. First one is that each learner is seen as a unique being. And I like, it's not just a unique being, but being unique in a meaningful way. And, being unique, it takes into consideration the background circumstances, the starting points with unique strengths, challenges, interests, and aspirations. All these attributes, they call for unique responses from the learning system. not only from the learning system, but also from the instructional designers. These are the considerations that we need to take, when designing learning. I mean, the unique strengths of the students, their challenges, the context, their interest, their aspirations. Right, and then we move on to the second aspect, which is that of that learner having an unbounded potential. Now, what I also like about this is that this it's the realization that, as an instructional designer, I need to understand that, this student is not an empty vessel, but is full of potential. It's not even full of potential, it's unbounded potential. And this potential, it will unfold at its own pace. It's not gonna be boom. It's not gonna boom all at once, but it's unfolding, and it in its own way. You see, this is very helpful. What the reason why I took the whole thing, because it informs me as an instructional designer, in decision making when I'm designing the program, or when I'm designing curriculum for my students. And then the last one is that each learner is seen as having an innate desire to learn. This is really interesting because, when you meet with teachers, they would tell you that, our students, they don't have interest in what they are doing. Number two, they are bored. Now, the question is, why? Because this says they have an innate desire to learn. It means the problem is not from the learner, my assumption. It's either the curriculum, maybe not the curriculum, but it could be, or it's how this curriculum is delivered. The methods that are used to deliver the curriculum they don't unleash that desire. That is the end. So the job of the education system is to unleash that desire. Now, the question is, how are you unleashing that desire of learning from our students? All right. Let's move forward and look at, we are here about designing learner-centered programs or lesson plans. Let's get motivation here. What are the benefits? How does it benefit the teacher or the student, or maybe the education system, or the community, the families, individuals? What are the advantages of this approach? Share a few. There's a lot you will add from this list. We're looking at the benefit of learner-centered approaches, where we see students taking responsibility of their own learning, which then lead to active participation, engagement, where they feel free to ask questions, and not only asking questions, they may ask themselves, not only directing the questions to the teacher, but also ask these questions, for themselves, and finding answers to the questions that they have. It's also reinforce creativity, independent learning, self-directed learning. It increases motivation to learn. Also, students, they they enjoy learning. There is fun in the classroom because they are at the center of learning. While they are at the center of learning through group discussions, through different strategies which involves working with their peers, that builds that builds their social skills as well as their self-esteem. They seek reasons for anything and everything. Now, when you look at these few benefits, again, it assists you, or yes, it does, it assists you with creating that environment for the students. Now, I'm tempted to ask this question to say, did you know that in your design, you can create an environment? It may not be a physical environment, but you create a certain environment. And that environment, it's the one which either unleash this desire for learning, or it's the one that it's the one that prohibits excuse me, it's the one that prohibits this desire, which whereby I mean students are, you know, they are disengaged because of the environment created by the design you have created. Right, let's move on to the common concerns. Now, these common concerns are, I'm sure you must have had colleagues, or maybe you would relate to them, you know, or as an individual. If I spend more time in class on active learning tasks, I'll never get through the syllabus. Are you familiar with that? I would like you, you know, as I read through these common concerns, I'd like you to, you know, to engage with me in the chat box and you know, and state whether you relate with this or not, or you have heard. And maybe after I have gone through all of them, I would like to, I would like you to maybe highlight one and state how would you address the concern. Okay, if I don't lecture, I lose control of the class. There will be chaos. That's another concern. What if they can't find the right answers to open-ended questions or problems? In fact, this one I have I can attest. I have seen it in the classroom where a teacher is really trying hard to find answers from the students when they are asking open-ended questions. Because learner-centered requires that, you know, it's not closed questions. You develop critical thinking. And then there is this one, if I assign projects to groups or tasks to groups for that matter, some learners do not actively participate. They rely on one or two members to provide answers or solutions. Therefore, I just use the lecture method. Some of the learners submit incomplete and or poor quality assignments. That is when, you know, you facilitate learning, you are not teaching, or you, I mean, as now we're talking about you in class teaching the content, and your concerns is that, you know, with this learner-centered approach, they submit incomplete assignments. The quality is poor because I was not there to control, I was not there to support, you understand? So I want you to share with me your views on these concerns, or maybe add to concerns that you have personally as an educator when using learner-centered approaches.
To say maybe the first concern is the issue of resources. So if there are no resources and learners, they are on their own. They can't actually get the job done. So they will be busy mingling in terms of not being sure what to do at that particular time. Secondly, the issue of the lack of motivation and or life coaching. Certain learners tend not to develop or have interest in terms of knowing what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Because now we're talking the issue of does the learner in the learner-centered approach have what you call the intrinsic motivation? Can they get the job done when I'm not there? So it's the issue of that, and the issue of what we call the societal decay. If you check, I'm gonna couple it with what we just said earlier on in the terms of learning, in the learner perspective, because now when a learner is in a platform where they experience what we call societal decay, they can't actually compete on themselves. They can't get the job done on themselves because now they have problems amongst the issue of the environment, whether is it conducive or not conducive for learning to occur. But now, when they're experiencing these other challenges, such as peer pressure, the issue of drug abuse, so such things, because the society nowadays it's overwhelmed by evil. So those are some concerns that we should actually look at them because they have influence in terms of the teaching and learning in the classroom. But in this perspective or in this approach, we're focusing on the learner-centered approach. But if the learner is surroundings of what we call all of these substances and all of these other disadvantaging factors, they'll end up not able to get the job done at that particular day on their own.
True. Thanks so much, Kosinati, for that contribution. You adding valid points there in some of the concerns relating to learner-centered. And you'll find that some, as you mentioned, the suicidal decay, it does have an influence, even though it indirectly have an influence when it comes to the approaches that we use as well. Right, I'm now going to ask Mr. Ndaba to share. Hopefully, Mr. Ndaba, you would also touch a bit on addressing some of these. We already have a long list of concerns.
Yes, thank you so much, Sis in respect of the common concerns that have been presented above, and when comparing them to learner-centered approach, I would like to first indicate that some of these statements, I disagree with them. One, it is not about covering the syllabus, but it is ensuring that the skills, knowledge, and the values are gained. Two, when we teach learners, sometimes we opt for lecturing because it seems the easiest, but that is not the correct way of gaining control of the class. You may lecture, but still you can lose control of the class. You may involve groups discussion. Still you can gain control of the class. Now also, sometimes we don't guide learners properly, that when they submit assignments, what is it exactly that they should do, so that we end up saying they submit poor quality work. I do believe that sometimes we need to look at us as educators, that what is it that we are expecting and the guidance that we provide. I believe that when we ask learners to submit projects or assignments, throughout all the way, you should support and guide, so that the work that is submitted at the end is the work that is of good quality, not of poor quality. Thank you. I submit.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Ndaba. Well said. And you mentioned, by the way, these common concerns are extracted from teacher comments. These are comments that we hear from teachers. You are right in saying that it's not about, covering the syllabus, but, teachers, as an education specialist, Mr. Ndaba, yourself, when you go to the school and you find that the teacher hasn't completed the syllabus, they know they are in trouble because they were
Yes.
busy with the learner-centered approach. I don't want to open it as a discussion. I'm just passing a comment. I'm worried that it will open a can of worms. I'm just passing it. Can I please proceed? I'm looking at my time already. It looks like we are running out of time, or we have already ran out of time. So perhaps, I think this is what some of our speakers, they have already touched on, especially Nomathemba, when you were using an example of role play to explain yourself as a visual learner. Was it yourself? No, it's not Nomathemba. It's Tamsa. It's no, it's not Tamsanga. It's who was this person who mentioned the role play? It's Nomathemba. It's still Nomathemba. Yes, it is Nomathemba. Yes, so we want to these are alternative methods that you can customize, that you can include in the methods that you use when designing lesson or when delivering lesson. As you can see, the picture used here, it's looking at the oral, the written, the visual, which speaks to the multisensory activities, accommodating multiple intelligences. And so when you planning the activities, of which we're going to close with that, and how do you go about? So these are the methods that you may want to consider. I think it's a combination of methods as well as strategies as well. So it's competitive games, design problem-solving games, team learning or peer teaching, role play, go out or meet an alternate location, online forums, Socrative dialogue, that is question answer, deeper questions, multimedia presentation. You should be infusing that in your learning design activities, using reverse question strategy, where the students would look at answers and solutions first, and then they create a question that answers that it answers. In that way, you are you are actually developing their critical thinking, and that kind of traditional thinking as well, that there should be a question then an answer. And then you can use the chunk knowledge. I think this one, it's now broadly used a lot in designing lesson, where you use a bite size of information, chunk the knowledge, and you connect the chunks to make a big picture. So you don't just present a big picture and you expect the students to chunk it down. Rather, have the bits and pieces, and then you consolidate everything to present the big picture. Now, when you're looking at our diagram on the left-hand side, it includes examples as well. Yeah, it includes examples of activities that you can use. So if you look at these, I like this diagram a lot, because when you are looking at your design and your design only includes the green part, it means it's not accommodating, it doesn't accommodate other learning, how do you call it? I don't want to say learning preferences. There is a word for it though. Someone who learns best by writing, by listening, and then the visual learner. For the visual learner, you can use a map model. They can like use mask artifacts. They can draw things. They can do the cartoons, not only draw the cartoons, but also they can act up those cartoons. I'm sure Nomatemba would really enjoy that one. And then we look at the written one. The written one can also be written and then converted into oral as well, where it will benefit a learner like Tamsanga, who learns best by listening. With that one, story, so it's not only, it may not be only writing a story or a script, but also the teacher can decide that, okay, we'll do the visualization of it as well as the oral part of it. So it's really, can we see here that you are the master here as a curriculum designer or a program designer to ensure that all the intelligences are taken into consideration. Then I would like to close with this design. I'm going to do a very quick description of each. That now we're coming to the design. In the interest of time, I decided not to use any of the models, but you would see that all the models, it can be the Ashore model, it can be a Eddy model, it can be any model that you find, you would see that it will follow this design somehow, where you need to state the purpose, you need to state the outcomes, you need to design. Even before designing, you need to plan the assessment, design the assessment, create the assessment. Same as with the activities. You plan the activities, you design the activities, and as well as create the templates for the activities. So let's start with the purpose. Now the purpose, it's the umbrella. It's the umbrella. Why are we doing this? Why are we even teaching this topic? Before we move on to the subject outcomes, what is the purpose? I think the purpose would also include the values, would also include the attitude. It's really that's why I'm using the word umbrella, the one for the purpose, not right. So it's the purpose, and then we move on to the outcomes. Now, with the outcomes, that is the indication of what is it that the learners would need to know, as well be able to do, because it's a very short session that we're having. The idea is that, okay, once we know what is it that we want the learners to know and what is it that we want them to do, we then come to say, okay, let us now design or describe these outcomes. Now, when you are describing your outcomes, the suggestion is that it's best that you use the verbs, because you are able to measure, because you need to come back to these outcomes to see if you have achieved them. Right. This is done briefly. It's a session on its own. Perhaps we may want to consider, maybe let's go for that. Let us go for our next session would be going into detail on how do you go about describing your outcomes. How do you articulate your outcomes, right? So right now, it's just a description of these elements. So it's your outcomes, right? Now, then we move on to what we what is it that you would need to assess now in order to achieve the outcome? So how would the assessment look like? Because the assessment, it's the one that assists you in understanding or knowing whether you have achieved your outcome, right? Right. And then we move on to the activities. Now you've got the assessment. What is it that you want to assess? When you know what is it that you want to assess, okay, how are you going to assess it? When you know how you're going to assess it, which instruments are you going to use to assess? Now, talking about instruments and the era in which we are in, you consider the using digital assessments, and what instrument would you use in creating those digital assessments, which would incorporate blended learning being face-to-face. If the learning is not face-to-face, the virtual one, right? It's your assessment. And then from your assessment, you need to identify the activities that will enable learners to achieve the outcomes, and meet the assessment criteria that you have indicated when you were planning your assessment. Now, with the activities, we go back to the methods that we have shared with you in our previous slide. That is where you identify which would be appropriate activities for this, and which strategies would I use for these activities. Now, the strategies, it's the delivery strategies, it's the strategies as well that the students would use in engaging with the blend activity. I'm really summarizing this, but I think it's best that we cover it in our next session. And in our next session, possibly we will even come up with an example where we also look at how can we then integrate technologies as well, into all of this, because that's also important. Now, I'd like to close our session today by these questions. It's, I'm not sure, I don't think it's going to be a discussion. I'm going to pose these questions. Perhaps these are the questions that we will start our session next time we meet again. We will have another section next week, same time on Thursday, where we unpack the learning design and these questions. How do you see this working in your teaching? Are you already doing this now? If not, why not? Like when we're talking about this, we're referring to the learner-centered approach. And we would like to, I think we would cover this again in our next session, where we would like you to share your successes of how you've been doing this so that we learn from one another. And we also look at the how could we improve? What is it that as an individual you need to work on? Some form of reflection. Right, I'm going to stop here. That is the end of our session today.